All right, let's dive into the deep end. Today, we're tackling a question that has haunted humanity for centuries. Who really built the pyramids? And we're going straight to the man who claims to have the answer. Graham Hancock. If you're even remotely interested in alternative history, ancient mysteries, or lost civilizations, you've undoubtedly heard the name. Hancock is a figure that inspires either fervent admiration or equally intense scorn. He's not your typical tweed-clad academic poring over dusty texts in some university library. In fact, that's precisely why he's such a compelling and controversial figure. Hancock comes from a background in journalism. A British journalist by trade, he initially covered international politics and current affairs for reputable publications like The Economist and The Times. He carved out a successful career analyzing the modern world. But in the late 1980s, something shifted. He became increasingly captivated by the ancient world, driven by the nagging feeling that the accepted narratives simply weren't adding up. This wasn't just a passing interest. It became an all-consuming passion. His real breakthrough came in 1995 with the publication of his seminal work, Fingerprints of the Gods. This book wasn't just a bestseller. It was a cultural phenomenon. It presented a radical thesis that a sophisticated, globally distributed civilization existed thousands of years before the established timeline of history. A civilization, Hancock argued, possessing advanced knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering that was ultimately lost to some cataclysmic event. And crucially, this lost civilization, Hancock believed, left behind clues, fingerprints, scattered across the globe in the form of megalithic structures, enigmatic symbols, and shared myths. And where do the pyramids fit into all of this? According to Hancock, they are not simply tombs built by pharaohs, but rather enduring monuments, testaments to the ingenuity and technological prowess of this forgotten precursor civilization. They weren't the beginning, but remnants, survivors of a lost age, repurposed and potentially enhanced by the ancient Egyptians. Since Fingerprints of the Gods, Hancock has only intensified his research and amplified his message. He's written numerous follow-up books, including Magicians of the Gods, America Before, and most recently, the Netflix docuseries, Ancient Apocalypse. Each work builds upon his central argument, presenting new evidence, exploring different sites, and challenging conventional wisdom. He's even put his life on the line exploring these locations in person, from diving in the freezing waters off the coast of Japan to hacking his way through the jungles of the Amazon. But here's where things get complicated. Hancock isn't just suggesting alternative possibilities. He's actively accusing the mainstream academic community of suppressing evidence and clinging to outdated paradigms. He argues that archaeology has become dogmatic, a closed-off system that actively rejects anything that doesn't fit its preconceived notions. In his view, archaeologists are more concerned with protecting their reputations and upholding the established narrative than with seeking the truth. He's thrown down the gauntlet, challenging the very foundations of Egyptology and ancient history. This confrontational approach, understandably, hasn't exactly endeared him to the academic establishment. He's been labeled a pseudoscientist, a sensationalist, and even a conspiracy theorist. His methods are criticized, his interpretations are questioned, and his conclusions are often dismissed outright. But regardless of whether you view him as a visionary or a purveyor of pseudoscience, Graham Hancock has undeniably struck a chord with a vast audience. He's tapped into a deep-seated feeling that the official story of human history is incomplete, that something is missing. He asks the questions that many people secretly wonder, but are too intimidated or lack the expertise to voice. He gives a voice to the nagging doubts, the unexplained anomalies, the pieces of the puzzle that don't quite fit. He is the ultimate outsider challenging the ultimate authority. And perhaps his most compelling and most controversial question is this: who really built the pyramids? We've been told they were tombs, constructed by Egyptians using basic tools and brute force, but what if that's not the whole story? What if these magnificent structures are far older, far more sophisticated, and far more mysterious than we've been led to believe? That's the question we're going to unpack. So get ready to have your assumptions challenged, your beliefs tested, and your understanding of history turned upside down. Because this isn't your textbook Egypt. This is Hancock's Egypt, and it's a wild ride. Okay, let's dive into the orthodox view of the pyramids. You know, the one that gets taught in schools, the one you probably heard growing up? The story goes something like this. The pyramids, specifically the Great Pyramid of Giza, were built as tombs for pharaohs. Pharaoh Khufu, in this case. Construction supposedly began around 2560 BCE and took roughly 20 years, employing tens of thousands of skilled and unskilled laborers. These workers using copper tools, ramps, ropes, and a whole lot of manpower, quarried, transported, and meticulously placed millions of stone blocks, creating the largest and most precise stone structure ever built. It's presented as an incredible achievement, a testament to the ingenuity and organizational skills of ancient Egyptian civilization. End of story. Except Graham Hancock isn't buying it, not even a little bit. He argues that this explanation, while widely accepted, is riddled with problems, inconsistencies, and downright impossibilities. He believes that if you examine the accepted narrative critically, with an open mind, it starts to crumble under its own weight. Let's start with the sheer scale of the project. The Great Pyramid is composed of approximately 2.3 million stone blocks, weighing anywhere from a couple of tons to a staggering 80 tons each. And get this, many of the granite blocks used in the inner chambers were quarried in Aswan, which is over 500 miles away. Now, how were these massive blocks transported across such a vast distance, especially without the benefit of wheels or iron tools? The standard explanation involves sledges, barges on the Nile, and an immense amount of human effort. But Hancock argues that this is an oversimplification, a convenient glossing over of an almost insurmountable logistical challenge. To move such massive weights with the technology they supposedly had, it strains credulity. It's like trying to build a skyscraper using only hand tools. Possible, maybe, but highly improbable and incredibly inefficient. Then there's the timeline. 20 years to complete such a massive undertaking? That means, on average, the builders would have had to place a block every few minutes, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for 2 decades. No breaks, no errors, no delays due to weather or supply shortages. Just relentless machine-like precision from a civilization that hadn't even invented the wheel yet. Hancock contends that this is simply not realistic. It requires a level of continuous, uninterrupted efficiency that defies common sense. Are we seriously supposed to believe that tens of thousands of people worked at this breakneck pace for 2 decades without any significant setbacks? It sounds more like a superhuman feat than a human one. But perhaps the most glaring issue for Hancock is the complete absence of blueprints, plans, or even rough sketches detailing the pyramid's design and construction. Think about it. A project of this magnitude, the largest building ever attempted in the ancient world, and yet no architectural records exist. Ancient Egyptians were meticulous record keepers. They documented everything from grain harvests to tax payments. They left behind countless religious texts and hieroglyphic inscriptions. But when it comes to the planning and execution of the pyramids, silence, nothing, zero. Hancock sees this as a major red flag. It's as if the pyramid just appeared, perfectly formed, as if it were handed down rather than built up from scratch. The lack of any documentation raises serious questions about the true origins of the structure and the methods used in its construction. If it was indeed an Egyptian project, why the complete absence of any construction plans? And let's not forget the tools. The conventional theory states that the ancient Egyptians used copper chisels to cut and shape the limestone and granite blocks. But copper is a relatively soft metal, while granite is one of the hardest materials on Earth. Hancock rightly points out that this doesn't make much sense. It would be like trying to carve a diamond with a butter knife. Even modern-day stonemasons, armed with diamond-tipped tools, struggle to work with granite to the level of precision seen inside the Great Pyramid. So how were the ancient Egyptians, with their supposed primitive tools, able to achieve such smooth surfaces, perfectly flat planes, and laser-like accuracy? The standard answer is patience and persistence, but Hancock argues that this is insufficient. The level of precision achieved simply exceeds the capabilities of the tools and techniques that are attributed to them. Another peculiar aspect is the interior of the pyramid. Most Egyptian tombs, even those belonging to lesser officials, are lavishly decorated with hieroglyphics, religious art, and intricate carvings. But the Great Pyramid? It's almost entirely bare. No inscriptions, no decorations, no boasts of ownership. Just massive, cold, empty stone. For what was supposedly a royal tomb, it's suspiciously minimalist. Hancock argues that this doesn't align with the culture and practices of the time. If this was truly Khufu's final resting place, where is the celebration of his life, his achievements, his legacy? The silence inside the pyramid speaks volumes. Finally, there's the alignment. The Great Pyramid is oriented with astonishing accuracy to true north, within a fraction of a degree. This is more precise than some modern structures. Without GPS, lasers, or telescopes, how did the ancient builders achieve such a precise alignment? The standard explanation involves careful astronomical observation, but Hancock suggests that it points to a level of knowledge far beyond what should have been, available in 2500 BCE, whether it was through sophisticated astronomical calculations or inherited wisdom from an earlier culture. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. This level of precision cannot be dismissed as mere luck or coincidence. Taken together, the scale, the logistics, the lack of plans, the tool conundrum, the undecorated interior, and the precise alignment all lead Hancock to believe that the mainstream story simply doesn't hold water. He argues that the conventional narrative fails to adequately explain how and why the pyramids were built with such complexity and precision. More importantly, it ignores compelling evidence that the pyramids may not be products of the Old Kingdom at all, but relics of a forgotten world, a lost civilization. In essence, Hancock is saying the Egyptians might have inherited the pyramids rather than constructing them from the ground up. They might have repurposed them, perhaps added their own touches. But the core structure, the technological marvel, that might be the legacy of someone else entirely. All right. Let's dive into the heart of the matter, the so-called smoking guns. This is where Hancock lays out his most compelling evidence. The data points he believes definitively point to a prehistoric civilization capable of pyramid construction. And of course, we'll tackle the inevitable academic pushback. Prepare for some serious ancient anomaly overload. First up, we have the geological evidence, and this all starts with the Sphinx. Now, most people see the Sphinx as a cool ancient statue, but Hancock, following the work of geologist Dr. Robert Schoch, sees a massive historical misdirection. Schoch's research revealed unmistakable signs of water erosion on the Sphinx's enclosure, deep vertical grooves that simply couldn't have been caused by wind and sand. Remember, the Giza Plateau has been a desert for the last 5,000 years. This kind of erosion requires centuries, even millennia, of heavy rainfall. The implication is staggering. The Sphinx, or at least its core structure, must be far older than the conventional dating of around 2500 BC. Schoch places its origins much earlier, possibly before 10,000 BC, during a period when the Sahara was a very different place, a lush, green savanna. And if the Sphinx is that old, what about the pyramids themselves? Were they built alongside the Sphinx by the same advanced culture? Hancock believes so and argues that the Old Kingdom Egyptians merely renovated and repurposed existing structures. They slapped on some new stonework, added their own inscriptions, and essentially took credit for monuments far older and more sophisticated than anything they could have built themselves. Next, we move from the Earth to the stars, specifically to the Orion correlation theory. This is where things get really cosmic, but bear with us. The three main pyramids at Giza aren't randomly placed. Their layout mirrors the three stars in Orion's belt, a constellation deeply significant in ancient Egyptian mythology. Robert Bauval and Graham Hancock took this observation a step further, arguing that the correlation is most accurate not for the traditionally accepted date of 2500 BC, but for around 10500 BC. At that time, the alignment between the pyramids and Orion's belt would have been almost perfect. Is it just a coincidence? Skeptics say yes, claiming you can find star alignments everywhere if you look hard enough. But Hancock argues the precision is too striking to ignore. The implication is that the Giza complex was designed, if not built, to align with the stars during a specific epoch thousands of years before the rise of Egyptian civilization. This suggests a level of astronomical knowledge and planning that defies the conventional timeline. It screams of an advanced prehistoric culture capable of mapping the heavens and encoding that knowledge into monumental architecture. And speaking of monumental architecture, let's talk about Göbekli Tepe. Discovered in Turkey in the 1990s, Göbekli Tepe is a game changer. Dating back to at least 9600 BC, it's the oldest known megalithic site on Earth. Older than Stonehenge, older than the pyramids, older than anything we thought early humans could build. Massive T-shaped pillars, intricately carved with animal reliefs, astronomical alignments, all from a time when humans were supposedly just hunter-gatherers. There's no evidence of agriculture, no settled villages, just monumental architecture erected by people who, according to the standard narrative, shouldn't have been able to do it. For Hancock, Göbekli Tepe is the smoking gun that blows the conventional timeline out of the water. It proves that a sophisticated culture with advanced knowledge existed in deep prehistory. And if it existed in one place, who's to say it didn't exist elsewhere? Could Göbekli Tepe be a remnant of a larger lost civilization? This leads us to one of Hancock's most controversial but also most intriguing theories, the Younger Dryas impact event. Hancock argues that around 12,800 years ago, a fragmented comet struck the Earth, triggering a cataclysmic period of climate change known as the Younger Dryas. This event caused massive flooding, dramatic temperature swings, and widespread extinction. The impact on any existing civilizations would have been devastating, potentially wiping them out almost entirely. This could explain why the archaeological record seems to start almost from scratch around 3000 BC, because everything before that was destroyed or submerged. Only fragments survived, perhaps in the form of myths and legends, or in the durable architecture of sites like Göbekli Tepe and potentially the pyramids of Giza. Finally, there are the mysterious ancient maps. The Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513, is perhaps the most famous example. It appears to show a surprisingly accurate depiction of Antarctica's coastline, but without the ice cover. Geological evidence suggests that Antarctica was last ice-free thousands of years ago. How could a 16th century map maker have known this, unless he was using much older source maps created by a civilization that predated the Ice Age? Hancock sees this, along with other ancient maps that depict continents and coastlines with unusual accuracy, as evidence of a lost global cartographic knowledge. A knowledge preserved and passed down from a prehistoric culture that had explored and mapped much of the world long before the rise of known civilizations. Now, all this evidence sounds compelling, right? So why the vehement rejection from the academic establishment? Well, there are several factors at play here. First, Hancock is an outsider. He's a journalist, not a trained archaeologist, and his work often lacks the rigorous peer review and methodological rigor demanded by academia. His theories are seen as speculative and sensational, more akin to storytelling than scientific inquiry. Second, Hancock's claims challenge the established paradigm of ancient history. They question the accepted timeline, the accepted origins of civilization, and the accepted capabilities of ancient cultures. Many archaeologists see this as a threat to their life's work, their expertise, and the entire framework upon which their field is built. Changing the paradigm would require rewriting textbooks, reinterpreting archaeological evidence, and admitting that long-held assumptions may be wrong. That's a tough pill to swallow. Third, there's a fear of legitimizing pseudoscience. Mainstream archaeologists worry that embracing Hancock's theories would open the floodgates to all sorts of fringe ideas. Conspiracy theories and unsubstantiated claims about ancient aliens and lost continents. They see it as their duty to protect the field from these kinds of influences, even if it means dismissing potentially valid evidence. The academic pushback against Hancock isn't just about facts and figures. It's about power, control, and the preservation of a carefully constructed narrative. But despite the resistance, Hancock's ideas continue to resonate with a growing number of people who are willing to question the established order and explore alternative possibilities. Because when it comes to the mysteries of the past, maybe the real answers lie not in what we already know, but in what we're willing to consider.